We have a small handful of comic news stories coming out today with both DC putting out some comics really relating to HBO Max. That's what I want to talk about. Probably the most, this is what's going to interest me the most, with probably nobody else listening to this. And we got a couple preview pages from Death Metal, and we also have some release dates to some comics people were wondering if they had been canceled over at Marvel. So let's get into all of these. Hey, everybody, this is Perch. Some news going around, but I think people are missing the headline that DC has created, and they're kind of available now, I believe. They're digital exclusive books called To the Max, and they're basically tie-ins to the HBO Max event. It's part of this kind of custom promotion of storytelling. And there's some decent names on these. There's actually some people on the comics. We've got cover arts by Jim Lee and by Amanda Connor. Jorge Jimenez, but we've got some inside stories. Scott Eaton's doing some stories. Laura Braga. We've got some people who are known. I mean, these aren't unknown talents. But what's interesting about this is these are new comics. They're new people. You've got kind of ordinary people who suddenly get powers. It's unlikely that these comics ultimately go anywhere because we've seen a lot of this before. For whatever reason, when media companies kind of connect with comics for advertising, they always create these very kind of, I don't say generic, but forgettable is probably the best way to do it. Heroes that don't actually mean much and never really go anywhere. I can't think of a single one that actually has lived on past its initial marketing push. But so that people are making fun of these as being kind of silly, generic heroes, and they have. But basically the premise is that to kind of promote HBO, that these characters. They kind of enter into the world of HBO Max. So it's designed to kind of promote things like Game of Thrones and some of the other series without being fully Game of Thrones. So it's kind of it's like marketing with handcuffs. That's what you've got basically. But the interesting part of this is that they weren't really promoted ahead of time. We've seen promotional items before, but the fact of the talent involved, the fact that Jim Lee's doing covers for this, the fact that there's some people coming in here who are more known, it does indicate, and I think this is the thing to watch for over the next year, a lot of these kinds of connections, is synergy between DC and the parent companies, whether it's AT&T and HBO. And a lot of them will probably be eye-rollingly bad, but you're seeing this tighter integration. And so it's relevant to people who have said, well, AT&T is probably on the fence about even keeping DC. Why would they even do it? This is one of the reasons why DC matters to them, is because they're basically cheap, effective marketing. Well, at least cheap anyway. Effective remains to be seen. But they're definitely going to leverage some of this. And I think what you're seeing them kind of test the waters is when you have a series like, say, Westworld come out, that doing a commissioned digital first or digital only comic book series to kind of promote that, it just provides additional mechanisms in which AT&T can promote their services where it comes to entertainment. So I think we're going to see a lot more comics. The indication here is we're going to see more than just this. And the other kind of interesting part, the bury the headline part of this story, is that these stories are certainly available on the standard streaming stuff, but they're also all plugged into the Apple iBookstore, the Google Play Store, and several other places that appear to be, we're going to broaden out beyond simply Comixology and the DC Comics apps, those kinds of places. So DC has played in these different places before, but the fact they're leading now more with the Apple iBookstore, the Google Play Store, means they're trying to go bigger in terms of getting distribution for digital beyond just a couple small places. So, in some ways, just like with the comics, wanting to find their own distributors, wanting to kind of push some effort into there, you're seeing similar things with digital. It's not exciting. You're not going to see the head of a Comixology calling a DC Comics sociopaths over this, but it's as significant. In fact, maybe even more significant, because digital is such a non-entity right now. It's such a blue sky. You can do anything you want with it. So the fact that we're seeing kind of more things come in, more stories push into that area, this is just the beginning. And so it's something to keep your eye on, I'm telling you. But chances are you were less interested in that, I suspect. And these characters, unlikely anybody will remember them within 6 weeks, if that. Over on the other side of the world, Marvel had put a number of titles on hiatus, and there were some questions about whether they were going to ever come back. Now, these include Miss Marvel, Strike Force, Savage Avengers, Spider-Man Noir, and Conan Battle of the Serpent Crown. Now, I think everybody assumed Miss Marvel would come back, and it is. So we now have a date of September for when Miss Marvel 14. This thoroughly blows the whole outlawed storyline. I mean, does anybody remember that Miss Marvel was gravely injured, and that kind of kicked off this whole situation where she needs to be protected? That do you support Kamala's law? She's a poster child for getting hurt by superheroes, but she's a superhero, and that's the regulation, and so on. But we all assume this was going to come back, and it is in September. Strike Force, Savage Avengers, Spider-Man Noir, and Conan the Battle of the Serpent Crown are all listed in theory as ongoing titles. They are all coming back. Spider-Man Noir had just put out one issue, and it's coming back in July 29th. And this is Spider-Man Noir. It's an alternate version of Spider-Man. Strike Force is returning July 15th, so about 1 month from now, with issue number 8. It's expected that this comic is going to end soon. It's not doing amazing business, but it's still with us for some reason, which is okay, fine. Savage Avengers is another title that I think nobody really assumed would still be going at this point, but it had a lot of momentum and then kind of went away with momentum. At some point, it just stopped with no momentum. Anyway, it's resuming again July 15th, a month from now. September 30th. Savage Avengers returns with issue number 12. Still going on with Savage Avengers against Cool and Goth. That comic is going to need some pretty significant recaps, I think, for people to get back into it. And finally, Conan. There we go. Battle of the Serpent Crown. That is coming back July 15th. Once again, this is kind of Conan going through the Marvel Universe. Going to introduce Atlantis and Mephisto's domain, as well as Wakanda. And so these comics are slowly trickling back. Again, I think at least 4 of these 5 comics people suspected were not going to come back, but they will. So, more Marvel stuff slowly sneaking their way back onto the shelves, and maybe less cancellations than people had thought. Finally, we get to Death Metal. We've seen a little preview. Of course, Death Metal's coming out tomorrow, Tuesday. So this is the event that definitely DC is hoping carries them through the rest of the year. It's everything has built up to this, and they're taking great pains to say, this isn't a subtractive crisis. In fact, even the title page is an anti-crisis. It all matters. And Scott Snyder has been very aggressive in saying, look, it's not dark, it's got humor, and you can see from the pages, as I'm putting the preview pages up on the screen, it's meant to be kind of a crazy riot, says Scott Snyder, but also that it's really intended to celebrate the various things that have been done, and that there's all these disparate pieces of comics out there, different stories that have been told, different universes, from Doomsday Clock, which is definitely brought in to the title, as you'll see in the first issue, but also the various things from Flash Forward with Wally West and everything else. It's all coming into play here, so it's going to be a pretty significant, I'd say, combination mashup. Mashups of this scale are often tricky to pull off, so we'll see if they're able to do it here. But at any rate, Death Metal comes out tomorrow. We'll see what everybody thinks. This is the comic DC is banking on, so that's why we're talking about it so much. It'll be interesting to see where it all goes and how it all flies. We'll be curious, as I think by the end of July, we'll kind of know if Death Metal is going to land or not with customers. It's going to have the same kind of excitement and encouragement, and that's basically going to state whether all of DC's changes and everything they've done are going to be, was it worth it or was it not? It's all going to play out over the next 30, 60 days. But anyway, those are kind of big stories that are going on today. It's interesting to see the pieces are all getting put on the board. We're ready for the big fight to occur. That's how it feels to me, that Death Metal comes out, sales start coming in, we see what the reaction is. That's going to either amplify or silence a lot of the critics of their move from Diamond. And it's a fascinating time to watch this all go down. Let me know what you're interested in. If you think this kind of, like I said, it's a story that is a sleeper story. I think the HBO Max stuff, not anything interesting there in terms of a comic. I'm quite confident it's not a comic I'm going to enjoy reading, But I think some of the things that are happening behind the scenes there are giving us some previews into what DC is going to be doing in 2021 and beyond, and we see how this relationship is going to work between DC and AT&T and kind of how it all ties together. I think we're getting some previews of that, and that's the sneaky thing we should be paying attention to as we go into the next year. But leave me some comments below if your thoughts on all this. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch, or you can send me a mail at Gmail at comics with an S, perch at gmail.com. Most importantly, thanks for listening.